As the personal assets, yet the government's wealth is still going to the Libyan Central Bank, which is totally controlled by the Gaddafi regime. So if they're going to do something, they have to do it full-heartedly or not at all. But don't pretend to be doing something and you're not. We need to starve this regime. We need to suffocate it. And more action needs to be done along those senses from an economic point of view. As for the no-fly zone, this is an extremely important thing because people are talking about the rebels as if they're in an army. They're not an army. These are Libyan citizens who went out onto the streets unarmed, protested with sticks and stones to defend themselves against an armed resisted against an army who was shooting at them with live ammunition. And finally, they got an opportunity to pick up these guns and try and move forward to liberate the rest of the country, like Misrata and Zawiya, who have been totally surrounded and have been annihilated with heavy tanks and mortars and cannons, etc., as well as... So, do we need a no-fly zone? Absolutely. We also need the rest of the international community to not intervene with soldiers on the ground, but we need surgical strikes. I don't think it's too much to ask for to have surgical strikes against specific military targets to help put an end to this regime as soon as possible.
I mean, theoretically, it may not be too much to ask for, but it's, practically speaking, a very tough thing to achieve. I mean, there are legal implications to doing this, let alone the logistical problems of actually finding and employing the necessary force.
My sincere belief is where there is a will, there is a way. If they want to achieve this, they can achieve this. And that's my sincere opinion.
So without that, are the rebels going to lose?
I don't believe the rebels are going to lose because ultimately the rebels are fighting for their lives. We are fighting for our lives. If we were to lay down our arms, we will be killed in our homes. And this is not an option. And the people of Zawiya have held out because they know there is no other option. Misrata is the same and the rest of the country is the same. If it's not today, it will happen tomorrow. So this is why we need more pressure from the international community to try and smother this regime. It's crumbling, it's falling apart. Many defections on all levels, whether it's diplomats, politicians, ministers, military generals. The whole world has recognized and said that Gaddafi has lost legitimacy to rule. Right. Then we need to do more.
Hussam Al-Gariana, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Now, it was one of his most famous presidential pledges that he'd close Guantanamo Bay prison camp and move military trials to civilian courts. But the detention center in Cuba remains open. And now Barack Obama has taken a U-turn and given the order for military trials to resume as well. John Terry reports.
Promptly to close.
Just after he took office, President Obama promised to keep a campaign pledge and close Guantanamo within 1 year.
It is a rallying cry for our enemies. It sets back the willingness of our allies to work with us in fighting an enemy that operates in scores of countries. By any measure, the cost of keeping it open far exceed the complications involved in closing it.
Obama also stopped the controversial Bush-era military trial system and promised a full review. Now, 2 years on, Guantanamo's still open and the military trials are back. The White House says it's made the system fairer, but critics see it as a return to square one.
The ironic aspect of this is that President Bush established this kind of review mechanism. President Obama set up this kind of a mechanism when he took office, and now this is the third iteration. I have no reason to believe that this new system is going to be any better than the two systems that it has already replaced.
The issue of what to do about Guantanamo Bay has dogged Obama's presidency from the beginning. His political opponents and some of those in his own party have blocked his efforts. The White House wanted to move and try some detainees in U.S. courts, but Congress made that impossible. Obama has also found it hard to find countries willing to take those released from Guantanamo, and his administration now says some prisoners will just stay locked up without trial indefinitely. Now that the review into detention policy at Guantanamo Bay has been completed, charges are expected soon for at least 3 detainees who were charged under the Bush administration and who've been deemed eligible to stand trial, but whose cases were dropped in 2009 so the review could take place. John Terrett, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Now, some new video has surfaced of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center in New York.
It's gone! It's the whole tower! It's gone!
The footage was shot from inside a police helicopter that was hovering around the Twin Towers. 17 minutes of footage was part of a cache of evidence that New York City authorities had handed over to a federal agency that's investigating the collapse of the towers. We'll take a short break. We're still to come on the programme, the latest on the situation in Libya, plus as oil prices reach 2-year highs because of the unrest, we'll take a look at the impact this might have on the global economic recovery. And celebrating International Women's Day, we'll meet one software engineer from China who's going head-to-head with Google.
As the rain pours over Johannesburg, we'll keep your spirits up.
Hello, welcome to another look at the international forecast. It's been a little overcast here in Qatar recently. You can see the cloud, it's sinking its way further southwards, so brighter skies coming back in behind, and yeah, it's going to warm up as well. Temperatures at around 27 Celsius for Doha and also for Riyadh. Similar values there for Abu Dhabi as well, maybe a touch warmer. Wetter weather further north though. We have got some rain affecting Kuwait, affecting Iraq. That will make its way a little further eastwards as we go on through the next couple of days. And look at this southerly wind picking the temperatures up by Wednesday to around 29 degrees here in Doha, 31 by that stage for Riyadh, so a touch warmer here. It'll be 31 degrees too for Karachi. Still a few wintry flurries on Tuesday afternoon over the higher ground just around Kashmir, but for much of India it's dry, warm, it's sunny too. Good cricket weather there for Sri Lanka, Colombo, with a top temperature of around 32 degrees. Plenty of sunshine too into South Africa, maybe the odd shower over towards the east, but some very wet weather, a chance of flooding into Madagascar, particularly into northern parts of Madagascar, northern areas of Mozambique, and heavy showers there. Seasonal rains stretching their way across a good part of southern Africa, right the way into Angola. Seasonal rains continue across the Amazon basin, the risk of further flooding, but brighter and warmer for Buenos Aires.
Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
The relocation of the Ahmadiyya has magnified the issue of religious intolerance in Indonesia. Is this inevitable in a multicultural society? And is the government turning a blind eye?
101 East at this time on Al Jazeera.
Without context, words can lose their meaning. Al Jazeera's coverage of the Israeli-Palestinian divide makes a complicated story easier to understand. Al Jazeera, every angle, every side.
Hello again, a recap of the latest developments in Libya. State television there has been denying reports that Colonel Gaddafi tried to strike a deal with the rebels that would have seen him step down. Meanwhile, the anti-Gaddafi forces have been calling for international help in their fight against the government. After heavy fighting in the west, close to the capital, Tripoli, the rebels have now lost control of Az-Zawiya and are losing ground in a number of other cities. Thousands of people have been fleeing in this weekend in what's being described as the worst fighting in Côte d'Ivoire since the 2002 civil war. Gun battles have been raging across the country as the standoff